It was a rainy Thursday evening in Dublin. The kind of night when the streets glistened under orange lamplight, and the wind carried the faint scent of sea salt and whiskey. Inside O'Malley's pub, laughter and chatter filled the smoky air. The pub was alive with clinking glasses, bursts of song, and the thick Irish accent bouncing between walls darkened by time. Near the back, where the shadows were kindest, sat a man named Raymond de la Cruz. He was a small, quiet Filipino in his early 30s, wearing a simple gray jacket and a look that blended humility with exhaustion. His hands were rough. Hands that had scrubbed kitchen floors, carried heavy trays, and repaired things most people never noticed were broken. He wasn't there to drink. He was there to listen. To feel for a little while like part of a world that wasn't so far from home. The karaoke machine buzzed to life, its screen flickering between names. It was karaoke night, cheap entertainment but a cherished tradition. Most of the regulars were already drunk enough to sing fearlessly. A red-haired man was butchering, Sweet Caroline, to the roaring laughter of his friends. Then came a lady who crooned, Danny Boy, with a wobbling but heartfelt tone. The crowd clapped along, half for the fun, half for the courage. As the host scanned the licks for the next singer, he frowned. Ramon de la Cruz. Who's that then? Raymond froze. His co-workers, 3 young men from the restaurant down the street, burst into laughter.
Go on, Kuya!
Sing for us, one of them shouted, nudging him forward. Raymond shook his head shyly. No, I just came to listen. But the crowd had already taken notice. Come on, lad, someone called out. Let's hear ya. Encouraged by the teasing and a few friendly cheers, Raymond slowly rose. His steps were hesitant as he approached the small stage, the wooden floor creaking beneath his worn shoes. He wasn't used to the spotlight. He was used to cleaning under it after everyone went home. The host handed him the microphone. What'll you sing, my friend? Raymond smiled faintly, glancing down at the old screen. Can't help falling in love, he said quietly. A few men chuckled from the back. Elvis, eh? Good luck with that one. Ramon simply nodded. He didn't seem to impress. He sang because it was the only time he felt truly alive. The first soft notes of the piano filled the pub. A hush settled, the lights dimmed slightly, and for a moment, the rain outside seemed to fall in rhythm with the music. Raymond closed his eyes and began to sing. Wise men say, only fools rush in. The sound that left his lips was unlike anything they expected. It wasn't just imitation. It was sincerity woven into every word. His voice was rich and warm, carrying both strength and sadness. It was the voice of a man who had loved, lost, and kept believing. People turned in their seats, conversation stopped. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. There was something hauntingly familiar yet deeply human in the way he delivered each line. When he sang the word love, it trembled slightly, as if love, to him, wasn't a word but a memory. By the second verse the pub was completely silent. All you could hear was Raymond's voice and the gentle hum of the speakers. He wasn't just singing Elvis. He was telling his own story, of nights spent alone in a small apartment, missing home, missing family, and still holding on to hope. A woman near the bar felt her eyes sting with tears. She'd been coming to O'Malley's for years, and had never heard anything like it. She quietly took out her phone and began recording, her hands trembling slightly as she zoomed in on the man on stage. Take my hand. Take my whole life too. Raymond's eyes opened briefly. In that moment his gaze drifted upward, not to the crowd, not to the lights, but to something beyond. Perhaps he was singing to his mother back home in Cebu, who used to hum Elvis songs while washing clothes by the river. Perhaps he was singing to the dream he'd buried beneath years of hard labor. When the final line came, he sang it barely above a whisper. For I can't help falling in love with you. The note hung in the air like a prayer. For 2 long seconds, there was silence, pure, stunned silence. Then the room erupted. Cheers, applause, whistles. The crowd was on its feet, shouting his name. Raymond, even the host, who'd been rolling his eyes earlier, clapped until his palms turned red. Raymond lowered his head, smiling bashfully. He wasn't used to praise. To him, singing was like breathing. It was something he did quietly, humbly. You've got a voice made of gold, mate. The bartender shouted. Better than Elvis himself. Ramon laughed softly, shaking his head. No one can be Elvis, he said with his thick accent. But maybe I can sing with his heart. That line made the crowd cheer even louder. When the woman who'd filmed the performance approached him later, she said, You have a gift, love. People need to hear you. He smiled politely, thinking she was just being kind. "Ah, thank you, ma'am. I just sing for happiness." She nodded. "Sometimes happiness is the best thing you can give." That night, as the rain fell heavier outside, Raymond walked back to his small apartment in the workers' district, the echo of applause still ringing in his ears. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a cleaner, not as an immigrant, but as a man with a story worth hearing. Meanwhile, the woman uploaded the video to her Facebook page, captioning it simply, "He sings better than Elvis. The kindest man I've ever met, singing his heart out in Dublin." By morning, it had already begun to spread. The next morning, Dublin woke up to another grey sky and drizzle. But inside a tiny apartment above a bakery, a phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Raymond blinked awake. Still half asleep after another long night at the restaurant, his old phone, cracked screen, duct-tape charger, was lighting up with hundreds of notifications. At first, he thought something was wrong. Maybe his mother had tried to call from the Philippines. Maybe something had happened back home. But when he unlocked it, his breath caught. 2.4 million views. He sings better than Elvis. Filipino man brings Dublin pub to tears. His performance from O'Malley's pub had exploded overnight. The video that kind stranger had uploaded, just a few seconds of him singing, was everywhere. It had been shared on Facebook, reposted on TikTok, stitched on Instagram, and retweeted by people he'd never heard of. Celebrities were commenting heart emojis. News outlets had started tagging it. The Irish Elvis. A Filipino worker's golden voice touches hearts. He scrolled through hundreds of comments. "I cried watching this. This man has more soul than the charts combined. Somebody find him and give him a record deal." Raymond sat on the edge of his bed, stunned. The cracked walls around him suddenly felt smaller, as if the world had just discovered the quiet man who used to sing only for himself. His phone rang. It was Margaret, his landlady, a sweet old Irish widow who treated him like a son. "Raymond love, you're famous," she shouted before he could even say hello. "They're talking about you on the radio. I nearly spilled me tea when I heard your name." Raymond laughed nervously. "Oh no, ma'am, not famous. Just one song. One song that's touched the whole world, apparently," she said warmly. "And someone from Ireland's Got Talent was calling the pub asking how to reach you. I gave them your number." He froze. "Ireland's Got Talent?" "Yes, love, the big one, the one with that Simon Cowell fellow." Raymond's heart started to race. Ireland's Got Talent. That was impossible. He wasn't a performer. He was a cleaner, a cook, a worker trying to send money home. He didn't have fancy clothes or confidence. He didn't even know what to say to a TV producer. That afternoon, while scrubbing the restaurant floors, his phone rang again. A polite British voice came through the speaker. "Hello, is this Mr. Raymond Dela Cruz?" "Yes, sir," he answered cautiously. "This is Anna from Ireland's Got Talent. We saw your performance from O'Malley's. And we'd love to invite you to audition for our next season." Raymond's mop froze mid-sway. "Sing on TV? Yes! Your video has moved thousands of people here. The judges would be honored to hear you live." He laughed awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "Ah. I don't think I'm ready for something like that, Mr. Dela Cruz," the woman said kindly. "You were born ready. Please consider it. Sometimes, moments like this come only once in a lifetime." When the call ended, Raymond leaned against the mop handle, his heart pounding like a drum. Around him, the restaurant bustled with lunchtime noise, waiters shouting orders, pans clattering, but for the first time, everything felt distant. That night, as he walked home through the rain, memories flooded him. He saw flashes of his childhood in Cebu. His mother humming Elvis songs while hanging laundry. His younger brother tapping on an old tin can as a drum. Their house was small, their meals simple, but there was always music. His mother used to say, "When life gets heavy, sing louder and act. God listens through songs." He had promised her he'd take care of the family. That promise had brought him to Ireland, thousands of miles away. For years he'd worked in silence, sending money home every month, watching other people chase their dreams while he chased survival. And now, suddenly, the world was chasing him. Still, fear tugged at his chest. He was undocumented, working odd jobs, living quietly under the radar. What if exposure got him deported? What if fame destroyed everything he had worked for? The next morning, he found Margaret waiting by his door, holding a plate of freshly baked scones. "I know that face," she said. "That's the look of a man doubting himself." Raymond sighed. "It's not easy, ma'am. I'm not supposed to be known. I came here just to work. She sat beside him, handing him a scone. And you've worked harder than anyone I know. But maybe, just maybe, this is God's way of saying it's time you share your gift. You've given so much kindness quietly. Let the world return some to you. Her words settled deep in his heart. That evening he opened a video call to the Philippines. His mother's face appeared on the screen. Older now, her eyes tired but filled with light. "Raman, I saw you on Facebook," she cried in Tagalog. "The whole barangay watched you. Even the mayor shared your video." He laughed through tears. "Mama, it's crazy! I didn't even know she was recording me." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "You were meant to sing and act. Maybe this is your time." Raymond's lips trembled. "What if I fail?" "Then you fail bravely," she said. "But don't hide your light. The world needs hearts like yours." That night, after the call, he stood by his small window overlooking the wet Dublin streets. The neon lights from the bakery below reflected off the puddles, and he whispered a quiet prayer. "Lord, I don't know why this is happening. But if it's your will, I'll sing again." The next morning, he replied to the email from Ireland's Got Talent. "Thank you for the invitation. I will come." In the days that followed, the story of the Filipino Elvis spread across Ireland. Reporters showed up at O'Malley's pub. Customers who once ignored him now asked for selfies. But Raymond stayed the same, still cleaning tables, still helping his coworkers, still smiling humbly at every compliment. Behind that smile, though, was a heart racing with nervous excitement. He didn't know what awaited him on that grand stage. He didn't know that Simon Cowell himself had already seen his video and was eager to meet the man with the golden voice. All he knew was this: for the first time since leaving home, his dream was calling. And this time, he was ready to answer. The morning of the audition dawned cold and bright over Dublin. The streets shimmered with dew, and a soft mist rolled in from the River Liffey. Raymond stood at the bus stop clutching a small plastic folder. Inside it were his song list, the show invitation, and a photo of his mother. His heart thudded like a drum beneath his second-hand coat. He had barely slept. All night, he had rehearsed the same song over and over until his voice grew hoarse. "Can't Help Falling in Love." It was his mother's favorite. Her lullaby to him as a child. And the one she'd told him to sing for the world if he ever got the chance. When the bus finally arrived, he sat near the window, watching the city blur by. People boarded and disembarked, wrapped in winter scarves, coffee cups in hand, each chasing their own kind of dream. He whispered a quiet prayer: "Lord, let me make Mama proud today. That's all I want." Outside the Ireland's Got Talent studio, hundreds of hopefuls lined up, their excitement painting the chilly air with nervous laughter and trembling smiles. There were dancers, magicians, comedians. Some with makeup, some with costumes. Others carrying guitars or violins. Raymond looked down at his plain jacket and worn shoes and almost turned away. He didn't belong here. He wasn't trained. He wasn't glamorous. He was just a worker who happened to love singing. But then he remembered Margaret's words: "Let the world return some kindness to you." Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The backstage area buzzed with energy. Staff with clipboards scurried around calling out contestant numbers. Cameras zoomed in on faces full of hope. A friendly young producer approached Raymond and handed him a mic pack. "You're contestant 127, she said, smiling. "You ready?" Raymond chuckled softly. "I hope so, ma'am. My hands, they are shaking." "That's a good sign," she replied warmly. "Means you care." Minutes later, he stood behind the curtain. The stage lights glowed like distant stars. He could hear the muffled laughter and applause of the audience on the other side. His pulse quickened. He pressed a hand over his chest to steady it. Then, the booming voice of the host echoed, "Next up, we have someone very special. A man whose voice has already captured hearts across the internet. Please welcome Raymond de la Cruz." The curtain lifted. For a moment, the light blinded him. The stage stretched wide and gleaming before him, the judges' panel glowing under the spotlights. Simon Cowell sat in the center, flanked by two other judges, a warm, smiling Irish singer and a cheerful TV host. The audience of thousands leaned forward, curious to see the man they'd read about online. Raymond stepped up to the microphone, his knees trembled slightly. Simon was the first to speak. "Hello there. What's your name?" "Ramon de la Cruz, sir." "And where are you from, Ramon?" "I'm from the Philippines, but I live here in Dublin," he said politely, his accent soft and musical. Simon nodded. "The man from the pub video, that was incredible. Tell me, why are you here today?" Ramon smiled shyly. Because my mama always told me, if you can make one person smile with your song, you've done something good. The audience melted. Even Simon's stern face softened slightly. Right, Simon said leaning forward. What will you be singing for us? Ramon took a slow breath. A song by Elvis Presley, sir. Can't help falling in love, it's for my mother. The crowd murmured approvingly. The music began, soft piano, gentle and familiar. Raymond closed his eyes. For a moment, everything disappeared, the lights, the judges, the cameras, it was just him and the melody. Wise men say, only fools rush in. His voice rang clear and full of emotion, smoother than honey, with a tenderness that silenced the entire hall. The first note alone made the audience lean forward. There was no pretense, no showmanship, only truth. He sang as though each lyric carried a memory. When he reached the second line, his tone deepened, raw and pure, the way love sounds when it's honest and unguarded. But I can't help falling in love with you. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. Even Simon, known for his razor-sharp critiques, stared without blinking. Something in that voice reached places that applause never could. Midway through the song, Raymond glanced up at the ceiling, as if seeing someone beyond the lights. Maybe it was his mother, maybe it was God, but whatever it was, it gave him courage. The final note rose gently, then faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the audience erupted. Cheers, whistles, and a thunderous standing ovation that shook the stage. The Irish judge stood up, clapping with tears in her eyes. Ramon, she said, voice trembling, that was breathtaking. You didn't just sing a song, you poured your soul into it. The host added, you've reminded us all what real music sounds like, heart, humility, and honesty. Finally Simon leaned forward, his eyes glossy but steady. You know, he said slowly, I've heard thousands of Elvis covers in my life. But tonight you didn't sound like Elvis, you sounded like you. And that's what made it perfect. The audience screamed in agreement. People began chanting, Golden buzzer! Golden buzzer! Simon looked at his fellow judges, they nodded, then he smiled at Ramon, one of those rare, genuine smiles that carried both admiration and emotion. Ramon, he said softly. You didn't just honor Elvis tonight. You honored every person who's ever dreamed in silence. Thank you for that. And with that, Simon Cowell slammed the golden buzzer. The confetti burst into the air, golden, shimmering, endless. It fell like rain as Raymond covered his face, overwhelmed. The crowd roared. The other judges ran up to hug him. He was crying tears of disbelief, of gratitude, of a promise fulfilled. As he looked up, the confetti glittered around him like falling stars. He whispered under his breath, for you mama. Backstage, Margaret was watching on a small TV, hands over her mouth, sobbing with joy. Back in Cebu, his mother was watching too. Neighbors gathered around their small TV set, the volume turned up high. When the buzzer went off, she fell to her knees, crying and laughing all at once. In that moment, two worlds, one in Ireland, one in the Philippines, were united by a song. A son's love, and the power of believing that even the humblest voice can echo across oceans. The night Raymond received the golden buzzer, the world erupted in applause. Both inside the studio and across millions of screens worldwide. Yet when the lights dimmed, and the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't walk out like a celebrity. He walked out like a sane man who had entered, quietly, gratefully, holding his heart together in disbelief. The confetti still clung to his hair as he stepped into the backstage hallway. Crew members and contestants cheered, patting him on the shoulder. Some were crying. Others were laughing, shouting, you did it, Raymond. May he smiled through tears, his voice barely a whisper. I can't believe this is real. When the show's producer handed him a towel and a bottle of water, he bowed slightly, as he always did, a simple gesture of respect that came so naturally to him. Thank you, sir. Thank you for everything. Back at his apartment, long past midnight, he set the glittering fragments of confetti gently on his small bedside table beside his mother's photo. He sat on the bed, still trembling with emotion. Then, softly, he prayed aloud, Lord, if this is your plan, let it bring light. Not just for me, but for others too. The following morning, the video of his golden buzzer moment exploded across social media. Within hours it reached millions of views. News anchors replayed it again and again. The Filipino worker who made Simon Cowell cry. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. On buses, in grocery stores, even in the restaurant where he worked. Customers would whisper and point. That's him, the man who sang Elvis, his boss Mr. Keen, came out of the kitchen one day grinning. Raymond.
You're a star now!
Go on lad, take the day off, you've earned it. Raymond shook his head. Sir, I still have tables to clean. The man laughed. You're too humble for your own good. That humility became part of his charm. Despite the fame, he refused interviews that paid too much, declined offers to endorse expensive products, and instead continued volunteering at a small local church where he led songs during Sunday Mass. He told the priest, "Father, if music can bring people closer to God, then I want to keep singing for that." The priest nodded, smiling. "Fame fades, my son. But the goodness you give, that's eternal." Weeks later, when the show's producers wired him part of his prize money, Raymond didn't rush to buy new clothes or fancy things. Instead, he visited a children's hospital in Dublin that he'd read about. A place that helped sick whose families couldn't afford treatment. He walked in quietly, carrying an envelope and a guitar. A nurse recognized him instantly.
Oh my God, you're Raymond!
The singer from the show. He smiled shyly. "Yes, ma'am. I came to sing for the children. If that's okay." Within minutes, he was sitting in the pediatric ward surrounded by kids in wheelchairs and hospital beds. Some were too weak to clap, others too shy to speak. But when Raymond began to sing, softly, beautifully, the room filled with warmth. "When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high." He sang "You'll Never Walk Alone" that day. The nurses cried. The parents cried. The children smiled through their pain. Afterward, he quietly slipped the envelope to the head nurse. Inside was a note and 5,000, the first donation he made from his winnings. The note read, "This money is not mine. It's from everyone who listened to my song. Please use it to help these little angels sing again." The next morning, news outlets carried another headline. Golden Buzzer winner donates prize money to Dublin Children's Hospital. Across social media, people wrote, "He's not just talented, he's pure heart. A true angel in disguise." Meanwhile, back home in Cebu, his mother received a call from the mayor's office. The whole town was organizing a community event to honor her son. But she only smiled through her tears and said, "You don't need to honor him. Just pray that he stays kind." Raymond would call her every few nights, despite his schedule. She'd always ask the same question, "Anak? Do they treat you well?" And he would always reply, "Yes, Mama. The Irish people are kind, they remind me of home." One evening as he walked home after a rehearsal, he noticed an elderly homeless man sitting under a bridge shivering from the cold. Most people passed by, but Raymond stopped. Without hesitation, he took off his coat and wrapped it around the man. The man looked up, startled. "Why would you do that?" Raymond smiled softly. "Because I have many coats now. You only need one to stay warm." He gave him a sandwich, sat with him for a few minutes, and listened to his story. It was a small act, no cameras, no spotlight, but it was these quiet moments that revealed who Raymond truly was. A few days later, he appeared on a televised charity event in Dublin. When asked by the host what success meant to him, he paused thoughtfully and said, "Success is not about how loud people cheer for you. It's about how softly you can touch their hearts." The audience erupted in applause. Even Simon Cowell, watching from backstage, turned to a producer and whispered, "That man, he's what music should be about. Not ego, not fame, just truth." Despite all the attention, Raymond kept his life simple. He still lived in the same small apartment above the bakery. He still sent money home to his mother every month. And every morning, before heading out, he would glance at the confetti on his bedside table. Reminder that miracles are built from moments of courage. But there was something else quietly happening in his heart. The stage, the applause, they didn't fill him. What filled him was purpose. The realization that his voice had power not to make him rich, but to make others feel seen. So he began writing letters to fans who reached out. People who told him his song gave them hope while battling cancer, grief, or loneliness. He replied to each one with care, always ending the same way, "Keep singing, even when life is hard. The world needs your voice too." One evening, as he was about to sleep, he received a message from the Ireland's Got Talent producers. It read, "Raymond, we'd love for you to perform at the grand finale. Not as a contestant, but as a guest artist." He froze, staring at the screen. Tears welled in his eyes as he whispered, "Thank you, Lord. I'll make it count." And somewhere in Cebu at that very same moment, his mother knelt by her bed, praying aloud, "Thank you, God, for giving my son a heart that sings for others." That night, as he looked out his window at the glowing Dublin skyline, he realized something profound. Fame was fleeting, but kindness echoed forever. He smiled, wiped his tears, and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll sing again. But this time, not for the crowd, for everyone who's ever felt forgotten." And as the city slept beneath a blanket of stars, Raymond's story, born from humility, shaped by grace, continued its quiet journey toward something far greater than applause. The grand finale night of Ireland's Got Talent was unlike any other. The arena glowed with golden lights, every seat filled, every camera ready. The energy in the air was electric. Anticipation so thick you could almost hear hearts beating in unison. Backstage, Raymond stood quietly in a corner, clutching a small photo of his mother. In it she was smiling, holding a rosary, her eyes full of warmth and pride. It was the same photo he carried in his pocket since he left the Philippines 5 years ago. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. "For you, Mama. And for everyone who believed when I couldn't." Producers buzzed around, makeup artists rushed to last-minute touch-ups, and contestants rehearsed their lines. Yet amid the chaos, Raymond felt a strange peace. His nerves, once a storm, had quieted into something deeper, gratitude. He had already won in his heart, not because of fame, but because he had found his voice, his purpose, and a place where kindness was louder than judgment. A stagehand signaled, "Ramon, you're next." He nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped toward the stage. The moment his shoes met the wooden floorboards, memories flooded his mind. Singing barefoot in the barangay chapel, serenading his mother on her birthday, mopping the pub floor after his shifts, singing softly when no one was listening. He thought of the strangers who had smiled at him, the landlady who had encouraged him, and the Irish crowd that had opened their hearts to a Filipino stranger with an Elvis dream. The lights dimmed. The audience hushed. The announcer's voice echoed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Raymond de la Cruz." A beam of white light cut through the dark, illuminating him at center stage. He wore no glittering costume, no flashy jacket, just a simple black suit and a quiet confidence that came from somewhere beyond himself. The music began. "If I Can Dream," Elvis Presley's timeless anthem of hope. Raymond took a breath and began to sing. His voice, deep and soulful, floated over the crowd. There must be lights burning brighter somewhere. It wasn't just a performance. It was a prayer. Each note carried a story. A migrant's struggle. A mother's love, a stranger's kindness. The crowd, who moments earlier were cheering and clapping, now sat motionless, listening as if their souls were being spoken to. Camera lights panned across the audience. People wiping tears, couples holding hands, parents hugging their children. Even the judges, seasoned and stoic, were visibly moved. Louis Walsh leaned forward, nodding in admiration. Michelle Visage clasped her hands, whispering, "My God, he's unreal." Simon Cowell sat in silence, his usually sharp eyes soft with emotion. As Raymond reached the chorus, his voice soared higher, breaking just slightly with emotion. "If I can dream of a better land, where all my brothers walk hand in hand." At that moment, the big screen behind him flickered to life. Unbeknownst to Raymond, the producers had prepared a surprise, a live feed from the Philippines. His mother appeared on the screen, sitting in their small home, watching through a borrowed television. She wore her old floral dress, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "And Ako, my son." The audience gasped and Raymond froze. His microphone trembled in his hand. Then he smiled, a trembling, beautiful smile, and kept singing, his voice breaking with love and disbelief. "Tell me why, oh why, can't my dream come true?" By the final verse, the entire arena was standing. The lights turned golden, confetti cannons reedied. But Raymond didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the image of his mother, glowing softly through the screen. He wasn't singing to win anymore. He was singing home. When the last note rang out, silence filled the hall. The kind of silence that said something sacred just happened. Then, suddenly, thunderous applause. The audience roared to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. Confetti burst into the air like golden rain. Raymond stood there, overwhelmed, his tears blending with the glittering storm around him. Simon Cowell leaned forward, microphone in hand. His voice was low, steady, but emotional. "Ramon, I've been doing this a long time. I've heard thousands of singers. But tonight, you reminded us why we do this. You didn't just sing. You gave us your heart, you gave us your story. You showed us that greatness doesn't come from fame, it comes from kindness, from courage, from love." The crowd erupted again. "Raymond! Raymond!" they chanted, clapping in rhythm. Raymond bowed deeply, then looked at Simon and whispered, "Thank you, sir. I just wanted my mama to see that her son did something good. Simon smiled, visibly fighting tears. She's seen more than that, Raymond. You made the world see the good in you. Backstage after the show, journalists crowded him for interviews. Fans lined up for photos. But Raymond, still dazed, slipped away quietly and found a quiet hallway. He leaned against the wall, exhausted but peaceful. In his hand, his phone buzzed. A video call from home. "Mama," he whispered, answering. His mother's face appeared, her eyes swollen from crying, her voice trembling. "Anak. You sang like an angel." The whole barangay watched. Everyone is proud. Raymond smiled through tears. "It's all for you, Mama. You're the reason I can dream." She nodded slowly. "No, my son. You're the reason others can dream now." Those words hit him deeper than anything Simon Cowell could ever say. The next morning, his story dominated headlines. Filipino singer brings Ireland to tears. Simon Cowell speechless, but Raymond didn't chase fame. Instead, he spent the next months performing charity concerts, visiting children's hospitals, and raising money for scholarships in both Ireland and the Philippines. When asked why, he said simply, "Because someone believed in me when I was nobody. I just want to do the same." Years later, a bronze plaque was placed at that Dublin pub where it all began. It read, "In this place, a song reminded us that dreams have no borders." And every evening, tourists and locals gather there to sing Elvis songs in honor of the man who taught them what true music sounds like. Not just heard but felt. As one Irish paper wrote, "He came to clean tables. He left cleaning hearts."